Good evening. All right, let's try that one more time. Good evening. Good evening. Excellent. Welcome to the 2024 University of Mississippi Doctoral Hooding Ceremony. My name is Annette Cluck, and it is my honor to be the Dean of the Graduate School here at the University of Mississippi. Tonight, we celebrate something extremely special. That is, we recognize the tremendous work and commitment of our graduating doctoral students, whose persistence, passion, curiosity, diligence, perspective, and intellect led to the pursuit of the difficult task of doctoral study. The doctoral degree is the highest degree the Academy offers, and few can claim such an accomplishment. Individuals only complete the doctoral degree through focused, intense study, sustained commitment, and a willingness to endure difficult challenges. Thus, it is only fitting to pause and recognize the entry of our 2023-2024 doctoral graduates into the Academy of Scholars. As we begin the exciting opportunity to recognize all of your accomplishments, graduates, I want to acknowledge the wonderful music provided by the University of Mississippi Brass Quintet, which you heard playing as you came into today's celebration. We have Dr. John Shechelin and Brandon Lewis on trumpet, Dr. Vincent Morale on horn, Dr. Michael Worthy on trombone, and Dr. Micah Everett on tuba. Please join me in thanking them for the beautiful music. I also want to thank the individuals that made this event possible. Dr. Sandra Spiroff, along with the University of Mississippi Special Events team, are to be commended for planning today's lovely ceremony for us. In addition, members of the graduate school staff, graduate assistants, and ambassadors are here helping to bring the vision for this ceremony to fruition. Please join me in thanking them. I would now like to introduce several members of the platform party. As I introduce them, I ask each of them to stand and remain standing. Please hold your applause until the end. Dr. Glenn Boyce, Chancellor of the University of Mississippi. Dr. Noel Wilkin, Provost and Executive Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs. Dr. Shambhoda Mead, Vice Chancellor for Diversity and Community Engagement. Dr. Charlotte Font-Pegues, Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs. Mr. Stephen Hawley, Vice Chancellor for Administration and Finance. Dr. Robert Dirksen, Associate Dean for the Graduate School. Dr. Morale Godfrey, Assistant Dean for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And Dr. Sandra Spiroff, Assistant Dean for Professional Development and Communication. The various schools and the College of the University of Mississippi, whose faculty mentor our doctoral students, are headed by our academic deans. I now ask these deans to stand as I call their names. Dr. Lee Cohen, Dean of the College of Liberal Arts. Dr. Viola Akoff, Dean of the School of Engineering. Dr. David Rock, Dean of the School of Education. Dr. Donna Strum, Dean of the School of Pharmacy. Dr. Paul Johnson, Associate Dean of the School of Business Administration. Dr. Mark Wilder, Dean of the Patterson School of Accountancy. And Dr. Peter Grangine, Dean of the School of Applied Sciences. I would also like to introduce other members of the Platform Party who serve as key officers of the university and deans of other academic and student-serving units. Dr. Tony Amater, Dean of General Studies and Associate Provost. Dr. Marquita Smith, Associate Dean for Graduate Programs in the School of Journalism and New Media. Professor Fred Slaybach, Dean of the School of Law, Professor Jenny Chavis, Associate Provost, Dr. Richard Forget, Associate Provost, and Dr. Brent Marsh, Assistant Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs and Dean of Students. The other distinguished members of the Platform Party have roles later in the ceremony, and I will introduce them at that time. Please join me in welcoming our deans and administrative leaders. I now invite Chancellor Boyce to the podium as he would like to congratulate our 2024 doctoral graduates and their loved ones on this important accomplishment.
Well, good evening. What a special and wonderful night it is. Thank you for joining us. Tonight's hooding ceremony is a major milestone in the lives and careers of our doctoral graduates. It's also a special moment in our academic year and the life of the university as we welcome the new members to the Academy. This day marks the culmination of years of study and sacrifice and exacting preparation in the noble pursuit of knowledge. And I want to reaffirm that word sacrifice, graduates. We do understand and we know what you endured. We're incredibly proud of you. As your chancellor and an alumnus who also earned a doctorate from this celebrated institution, it gives me great joy to congratulate you, our newest doctoral graduates. You have accomplished something remarkable, and I'd like you to consider this. I'd like you to consider that according to the U.S. Census Bureau, only roughly 2% of all adults in the United States of America hold a doctorate degree. I want you to let that sink in for just 1 second about the achievement and about the pain and the sacrifice and all the positive that came of it as well. But you are amongst the elite in higher education, and we certainly congratulate you for that achievement. This means that you've accomplished something very, very rare, and I speak from experience when I tell you this. This credential, this thing called a doctoral degree, will change the trajectory of your lives and your careers. I promise you that, and I promise you it was worth the journey. And if it wasn't, and if you think I broke my promise, feel free to call me and let me know why, okay? As a lifelong educator and chancellor of this great university, I advise and encourage young people every day to pursue higher education. That's probably not real surprising. However, it might surprise you to know that when I speak to prospective college students, and I have the opportunity to speak to thousands through the course of a year, I implore them to begin thinking about graduate education before they've even arrived, before they've even completed their undergraduate studies. My goal for them is to understand how professional opportunities and ultimately their career will be built off that last degree. Your career will be built off that degree that you earned so diligently and through much persistence and hard work. Regardless of how you decided to pursue a doctoral degree, I know each of you sacrificed a great deal. You sacrificed a great deal, and only you know how much of a sacrifice it was, because each of you took a little bit of a separate journey. We always do. That sacrifice involved money, it involved time, and it certainly involved an awful lot of sleep. And I get that. I certainly do. And you were not the only ones who sacrificed, though, and I know you know that as well. Your loved ones did also. We know that you would have enjoyed spending time with them when you were in the books or in class. We know that as you were grinding away on your dissertation, hour after hour, you couldn't quite give them the attention that you wanted to. We know that you called them up multiple times and said, I've got to have help. I've got to have help. We know that success in a doctoral program requires a strong network of support. You don't get there by yourself. Very few people ever do. It is vital that we take the time now to thank those who supported you for how they sustained you while you studied, created, debated, experimented, taught, and researched. So if you would, join me in turning to your loved ones and join me in thanking them as they witness this celebration and all the thanks for all they did for you. Mentoring and working with doctoral students is something our faculty value deeply, and I know our faculty here tonight have delighted in their collaborations with you. I'm inspired by the ways in which they influence your lives and ensure that our doctoral programs put our students on a path towards success. I want to recognize the faculty for their commitment, their hard work, and sharing their expertise to support our doctoral graduates. We are inspired by your generational input on these graduates. Thank you for all you do for our institution and ensuring that we are a destination of choice for doctoral students as they study in your fields. So would you all of us in this pavilion, thank our world-class faculty for all they've done to help these students get there. As a sidebar, faculty, and I'm off my notes here for 1 second, there's no way for me to put in words appropriately how these students will always remember you, and how these students will cherish you, and how these students many, many, many years from now will look back on these days and you'll be the first name that will be imprinted in their thoughts. That's something special to take forward in life. So once again, thank you. To our doctoral graduates, I thank you as well. We know you had options. We know you could have pursued your doctoral degree at many universities, but you came to the University of Mississippi. We are honored and so proud to call you a graduate and an alumnus of our institution. I also thank you because you supported so many aspects of our mission, from teaching to research to service. You produced creative works, elevated our institution through engagement in your classes, served in leadership roles and on university committees, and mentored students. You did so much more than people will ever realize to elevate this university besides becoming an alumnus. So graduates, enjoy this celebration and accept our deepest congratulations. And I certainly hope your futures are filled with blessings that bring you joy, success, purpose, and fulfillment. Congratulations.
Thank you, Chancellor Boyce, for those heartfelt remarks. Appreciate it. Let's give him one more round of applause. As we start our celebrations, we will begin with recognizing award winners. These awards are specifically given to honor graduate students. Graduate students play an important part in the education of our undergraduate students, as you heard, even though their principal purpose for being here is that they are students themselves. As such, it is fitting to recognize the contributions of graduate instructors and teaching assistants to our educational enterprise with awards. I call to the podium Dr. Emily Donahoe, Associate Director for Instructional Support within the Center for Excellence in Teaching and in Learning, to introduce the winners of 2 awards that recognize excellence in this work among our graduate students.
Thank you, Dean Cluck. The Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning, the Graduate School, and the Office of the Provost are pleased to present the Graduate Excellence in Teaching Awards. Established in 2019, the Graduate Teaching Assistant Award recognizes the importance of graduate teaching assistants who support undergraduate learning at the University of Mississippi. The recipient of this year's Graduate Teaching Assistant Award was nominated by no fewer than 16 of his students. These students emphasized his enthusiasm in the classroom and his ability to make difficult material engaging and enjoyable. His teaching philosophy is built on cultivating an inclusive and welcoming environment, seeing and meeting students at their level, and recognizing that education is more than just a letter grade on a transcript. One nominator noted that, quote, "He has helped me grow as a budding scientist tremendously, introducing me to the lab environment and the potential of a career in science," end quote. The recipient of the 2023-2024 Graduate Teaching Assistant Award is Jakob Zagar from the Department of Biology. I invite Jakob to come to the platform to be recognized with this award. The Graduate Instructor Award is funded by an endowment donated by Dr. Johnny Lott, the first director of the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning. Inaugurated in 2008, the award recognizes exemplary teaching by a currently enrolled graduate student who serves as instructor at the University of Mississippi. The recipient of this year's Graduate Instructor Award writes that her teaching is, quote, driven by the belief that mathematics is a skill to be refined rather than an innate talent. She strives to help students who might not see themselves as math people develop positive attitudes toward math in addition to advanced skills. In her teaching evaluations, students emphasize that she is committed to their success and good at adapting her pedagogical approaches to the students in the room. Her nominator, Dr. Kayla Harville, noted that she is skilled at creating the kind of comfortable classroom environment that is important to foster but difficult to achieve. The recipient of the 2023-2024 Johnny W. Lott Graduate Instructor Award is Apurva Mate from the Department of Mathematics. I invite Apurva to come to the platform to be recognized.
Yes, absolutely. Each year, the graduate school selects 2 outstanding doctoral candidates to serve as class marshals. We are fortunate to have outstanding nominations every year, and this year was no exception. I invite our provost, Dr. Noel Wilkin, to the podium to introduce the 2024 doctoral class marshals.
I'm pleased to announce the 2 outstanding graduates who serve as the doctoral class marshals this year. Our 2024 doctoral class marshals are Lorena Magana Sartucci and Brett Patterson. Tonight, we recognize Lorena Magana Sartucci earning the PhD in physics as a class marshal. Dr. Magana Sartucci's nominator described her as a deserving of this honor due to her academic excellence, outreach in the Oxford community, and commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. More specifically, Dr. Magana Sartucci has 2 refereed published papers in top journals and has a member of the LIGO and Virgo collaborations, is a co-author on 74 refereed collaborative publications. Of the publications in top journals, she is the first author of one of these articles, and that publication has already garnered 36 citations. Dr. Magana Sartucci was the NASA MSSGC Graduate Research Fellow and has presented her work at numerous conferences. Just as impressive as her scholarly achievements is her outreach to our community and service on our campus. She has been the primary organizer for the Oxford Science Cafe for 6 years. The Oxford Science Cafe is an excellent example of how a university's impact extends beyond the borders of the campus. As part of the Oxford Science Cafe, faculty and students speak to community members of all ages about their research and various science topics at local coffee shops. It's an excellent way to expose more people to science in a casual and unintimidating environment. Dr. Magana Sartucci also served as the president of the university's chapter of Women in Physics in 2018 and was active in envisioning a graduate student association for women in STEM. Following graduation, Dr. Magana Sartucci will begin a postdoctoral fellowship at the Niels Bohr Institute in Copenhagen, where she will continue researching gravitational wave physics. We also recognize Dr. Brett Patterson, earning the PhD in accountancy. Dr. Patterson earned top marks in his coursework. His nominator shared that Dr. Patterson's research ideas are very interesting, are of practical importance to accounting and audit practitioners, and are well executed. He has explored the association between personality traits and social bonds developed between auditors and their clients, reporting managers, to understand factors that may influence aggressiveness of client financial reporting decisions and auditor effort. His research also showed a relation between the scarcity mindset and increased risk aversion among auditors. Dr. Patterson taught several course sections over his doctoral studies, earning strong ratings on student evaluations of teaching, and we thank him for supporting that key aspect of our mission. Dr. Patterson received the Patterson School of Accountancy's Graduate Achievement Award in 2021 and was named the school's Outstanding Doctoral Student in 2022. He was also selected as a 2022 AAA Deloitte Foundation J. Michael Cook Doctoral Consortium Fellow. Impressively, Dr. Patterson achieved these accolades while at the same time competing as a high-level golfer. We are fortunate that students in the University of Mississippi will continue to benefit from Dr. Patterson's excellence as an instructor because he will join the faculty at the Patterson School of Accountancy in the position of Clinical Assistant Professor. I invite Dr. Magana Sartucci and Dr. Patterson to come forward to give brief remarks.
Good evening, fellow graduating class of 2024, families, faculty, chancellor. Everyone here has had a different journey, a different experience that has led them to this very moment. It is a culmination of our hard work, our strength, and our perseverance. And being here among you all celebrating all of these achievements is an honor. I was born in Irapuato, Guanajuato, a mountainous city in the heart of Mexico. Never would I have imagined that I would be standing here. I came to this country at the age of 10 and without a word of English. I learned English through books made for children. Every day I would sit down translating every sentence, writing it down 5 times. This is where my love of books must have begun. And it was one of those days that I picked up a book on stars and planets. And from that moment, that's when I decided I wanted to do astronomy. Later in high school, I picked up that same exact book, and I decided that I specifically wanted to study black hole physics, and that's a decision that has landed me here today. The path through my graduate school is as nonlinear as Einstein's equations. Very. I still remember the first day like it was yesterday. It was in the middle of the 2017 solar eclipse that my mother and I were driving to Oxford from the airport. We stopped somewhere to catch a glimpse. And looking back now, that was really the beginning of a new chapter for me. Coming in, I expected to be only working on research, but little did I know that along the way, I was going to find my passion for outreach. And it is through my time here that I have discovered the joys of sharing science with the communities around Mississippi. There is something special about seeing a person's face when they first start grasping a concept. And through these same experiences, I became increasingly aware of the importance of being a role model for women in STEM, and more so as a Latina woman in physics. The University of Mississippi has provided me with the opportunities to grow as a researcher, as a teacher, and as a human. For this, I would like to especially thank Dr. Maurice Efting, Dr. Annette Kluck, Dr. Cecilia Buda, and the NASA Space Grant team. These are people who have encouraged my every step of the way, from supporting my research achievements to becoming a better science communicator and an educator. But I am not alone. All of us here are here because of the people that have supported us, our families, colleagues, mentors, friends. Each of us have brought a different perspective, a different culture, and a different story of success to this university. And what we leave behind is a story of personal growth and determination. And it is with these attributes that we leave Oxford for a bright future. We have spent several years focusing on our grades, the number of publications, the number of conferences, and no matter what the next step in your career now, I think it is a time to take a break and bring back focus to those things that kept us motivated and sane, such as family, friends, sports, music, and any other hobbies that we have ignored for far too long. Imagine the 2024 eclipse as a closing of a chapter. We are all to begin a new one and forge our own career paths. And because of our experiences here, we know that we are strong enough to keep succeeding. I wish every one of you a fulfilling future wherever your next journey takes you. Thank you.
Good evening. Today has been long awaited, I think, to say the least, among me and my peers. So I want to first start off by echoing Lorena's sentiments and congratulating all of you here tonight. You each stand at the forefront of innovation in your respective fields, and I want to applaud each of your determinations to transform your intellectual curiosity into something tangible. And while we undoubtedly celebrate our individual achievements tonight, let us not forget the team of people that we've all had along the way. My personal success would not have been made possible without Doctors Kendall Bolin, Jeff Pickard, Christy Nielsen, and John Bentley. Each of the individuals that I've mentioned not only serve as high-performing academics, but they are also amazing, supportive people who have selflessly given up their time to ensure that I'd be in this position today. Most importantly, I'd like to thank my wife, Abby. When we embarked on this journey 6 years ago, she knew that changing jobs, making new friends, and moving away from old friends and family would be a part of it. She's met each of those challenges head on, and she has been an amazing mother to our 9-month-old daughter, Evelyn. Abby, thank you for being so gracious and supportive of me in this journey. It's because of your selflessness that I'm here today. For me personally, the celebration of tonight's success is the culmination of what I used to consider failures. When I was the guy who played in the US Open at the age of 19, but had no successful career in professional golf, I thought I was a failure. When my coworker in public accounting got a raise that I did not, I thought I was a failure. When my GMAT score prohibited me from applying to many doctoral programs across the country, I thought I was a failure then as well. In hindsight now, though, I don't consider any of those failures. Rather, I view them as all necessary steps that led me and my wife from the small town of McMinnville, Tennessee, to Oxford, Mississippi, so that I could pursue a doctorate in accountancy. The University of Mississippi has meant the world to me during my doctoral program, and I'm honored to begin my career here as a professor upon graduating. It truly is a dream come true, but it was only made possible through failing. If there's anything that I've learned throughout the last several years, it's that failing is inevitable and that success certainly isn't linear. To my fellow graduates, as you all advance in your careers, I would encourage you to keep in mind that everyone's path to success looks different. Ultimately, all we can control is our attitude and our efforts, and if those two are in the right place, then the successes are shortly after the failures. It's an honor to join you all in celebrating tonight. To the friends and family in attendance, I extend a thank you from all of us for your assistance and support throughout this very, very long journey. God bless and hotty toddy.
Thank you, Drs. Magana, Zertuche, and Patterson, for those very inspirational remarks. In 1872, Yale University granted the first PhD in the United States. Shortly after, the first graduate school in the country opened at Johns Hopkins University, and that first model shapes our graduate school here at the University of Mississippi. Formally organized in 1927, the University of Mississippi Graduate School has articulated critical aims from which I quote, "The doctoral candidate should aspire to a degree of knowledge of a given subject in order to make a contribution that is of original and independent value." These words, written 97 years ago, still describe graduate education. Each of you has the capacity to understand great depths of knowledge in your discipline and to convey knowledge. But you are trained as creators of new knowledge. For the family members and friends in the audience, this generation of knowledge manifests in part through the completion of a dissertation, which is an independent research project or scholarly product that illustrates to the faculty mentors, the academy, and the world that the doctoral graduate indeed has the capacity to generate new knowledge of relevance to their discipline. The demonstration of this capacity in the form of a dissertation requires hours of effort. For those who may not know, it would not be possible for me to estimate the exact number of hours, and it varies by discipline. However, I can say that that estimate is in the hundreds of hours for that single, albeit very long, document. Later, as we call the names of each graduate, I direct you to the 2024 commencement program, which contains the titles for each student's dissertation. The hooding ceremony itself commemorates the earning of the doctoral degree. The ceremony is a symbolic ritual in which the advisor initiates the student into the highest order of scholars, and the color of the hood represents the different degrees and universities. The hood of the PhD is edged in blue velvet, and the hood of the EDD edged in light blue velvet. The lining reflects the degree-granting institution. You will notice that our faculty members wear hoods with a range of colors marking their degrees in doctoral institutions. Some of our graduates will also wear honors cords and stoles. For example, initiates into Phi Kappa Phi, the All-Discipline Honor Society, have cords with blue and gold. We recognize our doctoral graduates, who are first-generation college graduates, with double cords twisted in purple and gold. It's time. I now call forward for hooding the 2023-2024 class of doctoral graduates of the University of Mississippi, along with their faculty advisors. Associate Professor of the Department of Theater and Film, Rory Ledbetter, will now move to the podium. As a member of our platform party, he will introduce each of the new doctoral graduates along with the faculty members hooding them. As those graduates come forward, Chancellor Boyce, Provost Wilkin, and the Dean of each school or college will join me to congratulate the graduates.
Come on up, yeah. You'll want to, they'll do you there. Representing the College of Liberal Arts, Brooke Millicent Allen, receiving the PhD in Biological Science, hooded by Dr. Jason Dale Hoxema. Gaurav Shrestha, receiving the PhD in Biological Science, hooded by Dr. Greg William Roman. Maria Pena Porter, receiving the PhD in Biological Science, hooded by Dr. Greg William Roman. Rabina Shrestha, receiving the PhD in Biological Science, hooded by Dr. Joshua Eli Blumkatz. Stephanie Vaughn, receiving the PhD in Biological Science, hooded by Dr. Colin R. Jackson. Tui Im Win, receiving the PhD in Biological Science, hooded by Dr. Eric Holm. Divyansh Prakash, receiving the PhD in Chemistry, hooded by Dr. Soman Chakraborty. Jacqueline Jewel Mosley, receiving the PhD in Chemistry, hooded by Dr. Gregory S. Jumper. Karen Jane Hiver, receiving the PhD in Chemistry, hooded by Dr. Charles Hussey. Kendall Marie Wantour, receiving the PhD in Chemistry, hooded by Dr. James Cheesejewel. Matthew Albert Soche, receiving the PhD in Chemistry, hooded by Dr. Jared Heath Delcamp. Ravinder Kaur, receiving the PhD in Chemistry, hooded by Dr. Jared Delcamp. William Edward Metter, receiving the PhD in chemistry, hooded by Dr. Jared Delkamp. Adedayo James Ogoniran, receiving the PhD in economics, hooded by Dr. Joshua Hendrickson. David Ajiaman Duodu, receiving the PhD in economics, hooded by Dr. Joshua Hendrickson. Fozia Zafar Awan, receiving the PhD in economics, hooded by Dr. Joshua Hendrickson. Jennifer Carol Key, receiving the PhD in English with an emphasis in creative writing, hooded by Professor Beth Ann Finley. William Walker, receiving the PhD in English with an emphasis in creative writing, hooded by Professor Beth Ann Finley. Andrea Fernani, receiving the PhD in English, hooded by Dr. Scott McKenzie. Casey Mariah McKinney, receiving the PhD in English, hooded by Dr. Jamie Harker. Kara Michelle Russell, receiving the PhD in English, hooded by Dr. Jamie Lynn Harker. Kimberly Allen Cotel, receiving the PhD in English, hooded by Dr. Jamie Harker. Mariko Hiwatashi, receiving the PhD in English, hooded by Dr. Jamie Harker. Stacy Balkin, receiving the PhD in English, hooded by Dr. Jamie Harker. Morgan McComb, receiving the PhD in English, hooded by Dr. Patrick Alexander. Nicholas Armand Sabo, receiving the PhD in English, hooded by Dr. Leanne Duck. Kathleen Downs, receiving the PhD in English, hooded by Dr. Kristen E. Ellis. Alicia Steele, receiving the PhD in History, hooded by Dr. Rebecca Catherine Marshall. Colton L. Babbitt, receiving the PhD in History, hooded by Dr. Rebecca Catherine Marshall. Donald R. Guillory, receiving the PhD in English, hooded by Dr. Rebecca Catherine Marshall. Travis Christopher Patterson, receiving the PhD in English, hooded by Dr. Ted Owenby. Carrie Edwards, receiving the PhD in History, hooded by Dr. Ted Owenby. Azmahan Al-Khatani, receiving the PhD in Second Language Studies with emphasis in Applied Linguistics, hooded by Dr. Tamara Warhol. Ali Hassan Al-Amri, receiving the PhD in Second Language Studies with emphasis in Applied Linguistics, hooded by Dr. Tamara Warhol. Kurt Wilden Smith, Receiving the PhD in Second Language Studies with emphasis in Applied Linguistics, hooded by Dr. Tamara Warhol. Salman Al-Tamimi, receiving the PhD in Second Language Studies with emphasis in Applied Linguistics, hooded by Dr. Tamara Warhol. Shanshan Duan, receiving the PhD in Second Language Studies with emphasis in Applied Linguistics, hooded by Dr. Maria Fionda. Abdullah Al-Khatani, receiving the PhD in Second Language Studies with emphasis in Applied Linguistics, hooded by Dr. Felice Coles. Ala Mohammed Asha Rahani, PhD in Second Language Studies with emphasis in Applied Linguistics, hooded by Dr. Felice Coles. Arwa Al-Sindi, receiving the PhD in Second Language Studies with emphasis in Applied Linguistics, hooded by Dr. Felice Coles. Mayahana Palajo Urbina, receiving the PhD in Second Language Studies with emphasis in Applied Linguistics, hooded by Dr. Felice Coles. Samah Mohammed Duli, receiving the PhD in Second Language Studies with emphasis in Applied Linguistics, hooded by Dr. Felice Coles. Sarah Aldosari, receiving the PhD in Second Language Studies with emphasis in Applied Linguistics, hooded by Dr. Felice Coles.
English name Abner Ken Jung. What would you like? Abner. A-B-N-E-R Jung. Abner Jung. Yes, please.
Abner Jung, PhD in Language Studies with emphasis in Applied Linguistics, hooded by Dr. Felice Coles. Rosalind Vasquez Rutland, receiving the PhD in Second Language Studies with emphasis in Spanish, hooded by Dr. Felice Coles. Abdullah Balbed, receiving the PhD in Second Language Studies with emphasis in Applied Linguistics, hooded by Dr. Felice Coles. Yasmin Sadiq, receiving the PhD in Second Language Studies with emphasis in Applied Linguistics, hooded by Dr. Alan Clark. Apurva Mate, receiving the PhD in Mathematics, hooded by Dr. Kinyan Bu. Casey Lockridge, receiving the PhD in Mathematics, hooded by Dr. Jeremy Clark. Joe Lopez, receiving the PhD in Mathematics, hooded by Dr. Samuel Lisi and Sasha Kotzik. Li Zhong, receiving the PhD in Mathematics, hooded by Dr. Bing Wei. Kanchana Madhumali Gamlat Eswada Gamlat Dalaji, receiving the PhD in Mathematics, hooded by Dr. Bing Wei. Mahmoud Hassan, receiving the PhD in Mathematics, hooded by Dr. Haili Sung.
Matthias Muya. Matthias Muya. Yes, Matthias. Marshall long left.
Matthias Muya, receiving the PhD in mathematics, hooded by Dr. Marshall Longla. Lorena Magana Zertucci, receiving the PhD in physics, hooded by Dr. Leo Heimstein. L. Joseph Rivas III, receiving the PhD in physics, hooded by Dr. Leo Stein. Akshay Karse, receiving the PhD in physics, hooded by Dr. Leo Stein. Bin Liang, receiving the PhD in physics, hooded by Dr. Roger M. Waxler. Saroz Pokhrel, receiving the PhD in physics, hooded by Dr. Jake Bennett. Sumit Kulkarni, receiving the PhD in physics, hooded by Dr. Anuradha Gupta. Anne Vogel, receiving the PhD in psychology with emphasis in experimental psychology, hooded by Dr. Rebecca Smith. Adam Joseph Beam, receiving the PhD in psychology with emphasis in experimental psychology, hooded by Dr. Joseph David Wellman. Dongvi Win, receiving the PhD in psychology with emphasis in experimental psychology, hooded by Dr. Joseph David Wellman. Natasha Wood, receiving the PhD in psychology with emphasis in experimental psychology, hooded by Dr. Andrew Hales. Zubi Reagan Pierce, receiving the PhD in psychology with emphasis in experimental psychology, hooded by Dr. Stephanie Elizabeth Miller. Jamie Murtaugh, receiving the PhD in psychology with emphasis in clinical psychology, hooded by Dr. Sarah Ann Bilski. Michaela Jocelyn Sage Rayleigh, receiving the PhD in psychology with emphasis in clinical psychology, hooded by Dr. John N. Young.
Okay. Stephen Michael Bishop.
Yes,
Is this a
Steve.
joke?
No, that's not a joke. That's for real. That's mine. That's his name.
Stephen Michael Bishop, receiving the PhD in psychology with emphasis in clinical psychology, hooded by Dr. John Young. And now representing the School of Engineering, Grace McMahon Rushing, receiving the PhD in engineering science with an emphasis in civil engineering, hooded by Dr. Khalil Alostaz. MD Lal Mahmood, receiving the PhD in engineering science with an emphasis in hydrology and computational hydroscience, hooded by Dr. Robert Holt. Arindam Mukherjee, receiving the PhD in engineering science with an emphasis in geology and geological engineering, hooded by Dr. Robert Holt.
MD Rejwan Hussain and
Rejwan
Professor MD
Sakib Hassan. Say it again.
MD Rejwan Hussain.
Rejwan Hussain.
MD Rejun Hossein, receiving the PhD in Engineering Science with an emphasis in Computer Engineering, hooded by Dr. MD Saqib Hassan. Carla Rego, receiving the PhD in Engineering Science with an emphasis in Computer Science, hooded by Dr. Yishen Chen.
Is it Thomas or Thomas? Thomas.
Thomas Chiloni, receiving the PhD in Engineering Science with an emphasis in Computer Science, hooded by Dr. Charles Walter. Avijit Sarkar, receiving the PhD in Engineering Science with an emphasis in Electrical Engineering, hooded by Dr. John Deigel. Shaylee Yagnik, receiving the PhD in Engineering Science with an emphasis in Electrical Engineering, hooded by Dr. Ramanarayanan Vishwanathan.
Sounds great. Yeah. Shafari Pawar. Yeah. And my name Yakovlev. Exactly. Yes.
Shafali Pawar, receiving the PhD in Engineering Science with an emphasis in electromagnetics, hooded by Dr. Alexander Yakovlev. Hosalmadin Zubi, receiving the PhD in Engineering Science with an emphasis in Geology and Geological Engineering, hooded by Dr. Brian Frederick Platt.
Same advisor.
Okay. Pratap Bohara?
Yes.
Pratap Bohara, receiving the PhD in Engineering Science with an emphasis in Geology and Geological Engineering, hooded by Dr. Brian Frederick Platt. Alexander Webb Fortenberry, receiving the PhD in Engineering Science with an emphasis in Chemical Engineering, hooded by Dr. Adam Smith. Olawashei Shofalawe Bakari, receiving the PhD in Engineering Science with an emphasis in Chemical Engineering, hooded by Dr. Thomas Werfel. Omayama Alazam, receiving the PhD in Engineering Science with an emphasis in Chemical Engineering, hooded by Dr. Nikki Reineman. And now representing the School of Education, Amberly T. Chapman, receiving the EDD in Education Leadership K through 12, hooded by Dr. Jill Cabrera. Kimberly Deanne Price, receiving the EDD in Education Leadership K through 12, hooded by Dr. Jill Cabrera. Kristen Lauren Fondren, receiving the EDD in Educational Leadership K through 12, hooded by Dr. Jill Cabrera. Regina Latrice Deloach, receiving the EDD in Educational Leadership K through 12, hooded by Dr. Jill Cabrera. Edward Campbell McLaughlin, receiving the PhD in Education Leadership K through 12, hooded by Dr. Jill Cabrera. Eula A. Anderson, receiving the EDD in Education Leadership K through 12, hooded by Dr. Angus Mungle and Mark DeShane. Shanika Kenyon Hardy Hickman, receiving the EDD in Education Leadership K through 12, hooded by Dr. Angus Mungle. John Henry Dixon IV, receiving the PhD in Education Leadership K through 12, hooded by Dr. Angus Mungle and Richard Balkin. Dylan Wren, receiving the PhD in Counselor Education, hooded by Dr. Alex Kerwin and Rick Balkin. Congratulations. Go ahead. Elois Nicholson Booker, receiving the EDD in Education Leadership K through 12, hooded by Dr. Douglas Davis. Courtney McDowell Bush, receiving the EDD in Education Leadership K through 12, hooded by Dr. Douglas Davis. Letitia Kimbrough, receiving the EDD in Education Leadership K through 12, hooded by Dr. Douglas Davis. Talana Deshay Belcher, receiving the EDD in Education Leadership K through 12, hooded by Dr. Douglas Davis. Diala Husney Cheney, receiving the PhD in Education Leadership K through 12, hooded by Dr. Douglas Davis.
Hooded by
Keith D. Powell, receiving the EDD in Education Leadership K through 12, hooded by Dr. Dennis Bunch. Nikki Rochelle Malone, receiving the EDD in Education Leadership K through 12, hooded by Dr. Dennis A. Bunch. Tamikia Helm, receiving the EDD in Education Leadership K through 12, hooded by Dr. Dennis Bunch. Brittany Monique Boyd, receiving the PhD in Education Leadership K through 12, hooded by Dr. Dennis Bunch. Dustin Ryan Payne, receiving the PhD in Education Leadership K through 12, hooded by Dr. Dennis Bunch. Elise Dosat Brown, receiving the PhD in Education Leadership K through 12, hooded by Dr. Dennis Bunch. Kanaya Latrice Watson, receiving the EDD in Education, hooded by Dr. Alan Bellman. Nicole Lewis, receiving the EDD in Education, hooded by Dr. Carrie Malier. Matthew Ryan Searle, receiving the EDD in Education with emphasis in higher education, hooded by Dr. Carrie Malier. Sandra Evelyn Carver Hubbard, receiving the EDD in Education with emphasis in higher education, hooded by Dr. Carrie Malier. Zach Taylor Gray, receiving the EDD in Education with emphasis in higher education, hooded by Dr. Carrie Malier. Afton Thomas, receiving the EDD in Education with emphasis in higher education, hooded by Dr. Phyllis George. Jasmine Deshay Kelly, receiving the EDD in Education with emphasis in higher education, hooded by Dr. Phyllis George. Tony Denise Avant, receiving the EDD in Education with emphasis in higher education, hooded by Dr. Phyllis George. William Patrick Brown Tier Jr., receiving the EDD in Education with emphasis in higher education, hooded by Dr. Phyllis George. Morgan Ricks, receiving the EDD in Education with emphasis in higher education, hooded by Dr. Phyllis George. Amanda Alpert Jesse, receiving the EDD in Education with emphasis in higher education, hooded by Dr. Whitney Webb. Jennifer Jewel Sanford, receiving the EDD in Education with emphasis in higher education, hooded by Dr. Whitney Webb. Bree Noel Gates, receiving the PhD in Higher Ed Student Personnel, hooded by Dr. Whitney Webb. Billy J. Benson, Jr., receiving the EDD in Education with emphasis in higher education, hooded by Dr. Macy Edmondson. Gabrielle Sokol, receiving the EDD in Education with emphasis in higher education, hooded by Dr. George McClellan. Jennifer A. Simmons, receiving the EDD in Education with emphasis in higher education, hooded by Dr. George McClellan. Shatara Katia Lachey Hall, receiving the EDD in Education with emphasis in higher education, hooded by Dr. Amy Wells Dolan. Shannon Elizabeth Priest, receiving the EDD in elementary education, hooded by Dr. Joel Amadan. Ave Mayu Miller, receiving the PhD in elementary education, hooded by Dr. Joel Amadan. Mindy Claire Waldrop, receiving the PhD in special education, hooded by Dr. Roy J. Thurston. Shakita Bagwell, receiving the PhD in elementary education, hooded by Dr. Lane Gaucher. Lisa Suzanne Riles, receiving the EDD in early childhood education, hooded by Dr. Kenya Wolf. Cameron Ball Tran, receiving the PhD in counselor education, hooded by Dr. Amanda Winburn and Dr. Frank Hudspeth. Rachel McLean, receiving the PhD in counselor education, hooded by Dr. Amanda Winburn. And now representing the School of Pharmacy, William Michael Neal, receiving the PhD in pharmaceutical sciences with emphasis in pharmacognosy, hooded by Dr. Ikhlas Khan.
Baharul Islam, yes. And my advisor, Dr. David Colby.
David Colby.
Baharul Islam, receiving the PhD in Pharmaceutical Sciences, with emphasis in medicinal chemistry, hooded by Dr. Colby. Chen Tian Sa, receiving the PhD in Pharmaceutical Sciences, with emphasis in pharmaceutics, hooded by Dr. Somyojit Majumdar.
Sagar Narala. Narala. Yes.
Sagar Narala, receiving the PhD in Pharmaceutical Sciences with emphasis in pharmaceutics, hooded by Dr. Michael Rebka.
Shang Feng. Yes, correct.
Shang Feng, receiving the PhD in Pharmaceutical Sciences with emphasis in pharmaceutics, hooded by Dr. Michael Repka.
Preeti Mandaki.
Yeah, right.
Preeti Mandati, receiving the PhD in Pharmaceutical Sciences with emphasis in pharmaceutics, hooded by Dr. Michael Repka.
Hong He.
Hong He Wong, receiving the PhD in Pharmaceutical Sciences with emphasis in pharmaceutics, hooded by Dr. Michael Repka.
Peilun.
Pei Lun Chung, receiving the PhD in Pharmaceutical Sciences with emphasis in pharmaceutics, hooded by Dr. Michael Repka. Sara Zakia Nasruddin, receiving the PhD in Pharmaceutical Sciences with emphasis in pharmacy administration, hooded by Dr. Aaron Holmes and Dr. Sujit Ramachandran. Somil Jodov, receiving the PhD in Pharmaceutical Sciences with emphasis in pharmacy administration, hooded by Dr. Sujit Ramachandran. Now representing the School of Business Administration, Emma Gail Welch, receiving the PhD in Business Administration with emphasis in marketing, hooded by Dr. Barry James Babin. Zhengong Wang, receiving the PhD in Business Administration with emphasis in marketing, hooded by Dr. Barry Babin. Cindy Pan, receiving the PhD in Business Administration with emphasis in finance, hooded by Dr. Robert A. Van Ness. Aisha Gimire, receiving the PhD in Business Administration with emphasis in marketing, hooded by Dr. Kong Feng.
Paul Solanes.
Yeah, Solanes is fine.
Just Paul Solanes.
Yes, and Dr. Christopher. No, it's all good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Paul Solanes, receiving the PhD in Business Administration with emphasis in management, hooded by Dr. Kristen Cullen Lester.
Mercer E. Bullard, and then Catherine Bullard.
Mercer E. Bullard, receiving the PhD in Business Administration with emphasis in finance, hooded by Dr. Kathleen Fuller. Now representing the School of Accountancy, Tina S. Owens, receiving the PhD in Accountancy, hooded by Dr. Kendall Owen Bolin and Christy Nielsen.
Who you heard?
Okay.
Christy. Jeff Pickard. Okay. Wait, what's your Brett Patterson.
Brett Patterson, receiving the PhD in accountancy, hooded by Dr. Jeff Pickard. Now representing the School of Applied Sciences, Jun Sup Song, receiving the PhD in Health and Kinesiology with emphasis in exercise science, hooded by Dr. Jeremy Linecky. Matthew Chatlong, receiving the PhD in Health and Kinesiology with emphasis in exercise science, hooded by Dr. Matthew Brian Jesse.
Poli da Costa Valada. Silvio.
Silvio Poli de Costa Valadao, receiving the PhD in Health and Kinesiology with emphasis in exercise science, hooded by Dr. Thomas Andre.
Somgyun Lee. Somgyun?
Yes, right.
Somgyun Lee, receiving the PhD in Health and Kinesiology with emphasis in sports and recreation, hooded by Dr. Brennan Berg. Jeffrey Pittman II, receiving the PhD in Nutrition and Hospitality Management with emphasis in hospitality management, hooded by Dr. James Taylor. Darion Brooks, receiving the PhD in Nutrition and Hospitality Management with emphasis in nutrition, hooded by Dr. Melinda Valiant. Austin Marie Connor, receiving the PhD in Social Welfare, hooded by Dr. Yonghee Lim. Carissa Bacon, receiving the PhD in Social Welfare, hooded by Dr. Steptoe Watson.
Doctoral graduates, although today marks a new phase in the journey that is your legacy, the joy your mentors feel watching you succeed will not end today. They will continue to be mentors, eager to hear how your personal and professional lives continue to unfold. Ready to celebrate your next achievement and happy to offer advice, perhaps unsolicited at times, but happy to offer you advice to help you reach that next accomplishment. Each of them hopes that you will keep them informed of your successes and your setbacks. You are a part of their legacy. On behalf of the faculty mentors and the university administration, I invite you to reach out often so that we may celebrate your accomplishments and continue to be a source of support when needed. We are proud of you, doctoral graduates. We are proud of you. So I remind everyone that there will be a morning commencement ceremony that everyone is invited to on Saturday at 9 a.m. in the Grove. We hope weather permitting. That's what we're planning on. And we invite all of the doctoral graduates to proudly wear your hoods on Saturday morning. As we wrap up the ceremony, we ask that guests exit through the doors that you use to enter the pavilion. Graduates, please use the northeast stairwell under Steak and Shake to exit the pavilion and meet your guests up on the pavilion plaza. There will be photo opportunities out on the plaza. I encourage you to take advantage of them. And if you have accessibility needs, you may leave through the southwest elevator. So, will the doctoral class of 2023-2024 please rise and face the audience? Faculty, administrators, family, and friends, please join me in congratulating again this doctoral class as they exit the pavilion.